Well, hello everybody. Happy Saturday and welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa with me, Chantelle, your hostess with the mostest awesome guests and viewers because Cathy O'Brien is hanging out with us this weekend, not just today, but tomorrow as well. But we will not be on Arrow tomorrow. We will be on SOULutions with Shanti. You all know the descriptions, the link is in the description, where we're going to be talking about cool, heartwarming, beautiful stuff. So I'm not even going to do announcements. It's weekend. You all know that we've got great things going on Arrow anyway. So check the schedule and you'll see what we have to. But in the meantime, ta-dam, Cathy O'Brien, yay, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here with you. It's been a little while since we spoke, and you're
Yeah.
just always amazing.
Well, likewise, that's exactly what I think about you, because the last show I know we did was that roundtable with Danny Henderson.
Yeah.
And we just love Danny on this channel because I was just telling you off air behind the scenes about Beverly Rhodes, who was the ex-psychic to the, ex-psychic to the ex-presidents of South Africa, and who's just started speaking up on the show this week. So, I mean, and Danny actually made that introduction because Beverly, I knew her from many years ago here in South Africa. She was all over the news and really like she was the top psychic in this country. And lo and behold, she was here because she was of service to the presidents from a very young age. She came from the UK and then had to leave again at the end of 99. So the indictment has been lifted and finally we're hearing about what's happening here. So it's really good that people are starting to speak, and very grateful that our mutual friend Danny actually made the connection. So how are you, Cathy? It's so good to see you. It has been a little while. How's it been going in your neck of the woods?
So many solutions have been in place. I'm looking forward to talking about those tomorrow. The people are taking action. They're not waiting on big government anymore. And it's so refreshing to see the positive change happening through public awareness. You know, it's because of people like you raising awareness that we've reached this point. It's certainly not going to be through the mainstream media. You know, it's going to be through people like you who dare to tell the truth. And that truth has taken root, and people are taking action and responsibility for their own lives instead of waiting on someone else to tell them how to live it. So it's an amazing time to be alive and to be part of that aspect of things. It's kept me very busy as a CIA MK Ultra mind control survivor who's been speaking out for over 35 years on MK Ultra mind control and healing from it. I am respected for the fact that my testimony has been the same for 35 years. I cannot be triggered because knowledge is our defense against mind control. We evolve with that knowledge. And because I have such pertinent healing information, that one more piece of the puzzle that people need to realize that it's within us all to heal. So it's great being part of that, and wonderful to be able to continue to raise awareness where it needs to be raised, and being part of SOULutions where people are ready.
Well, you know, I couldn't think of a better advocate for healing than you. You've got such, and I've said this before, and if I'm gushing, that's because I feel your beautiful energy. And I'm just responding to that because you've got such a, you know, from someone who's been through what you've been through. And there's a couple of people, and I know one of them in here that is in the chats is Joanne Breeze as well, a survivor from Australia, who have been through some of the most horrific things that any human being can't even begin to imagine, never mind imagine. And yet here you are, sharing light, sharing love, sharing your testimony. And as you say, the fact that you can't actually be triggered anymore is absolutely such a proof that you've healed and that healing is possible. And especially from the MK Ultra. And I know we're going to definitely talk more about that tomorrow. But it was so interesting for me as well, you know, just sort of going back and looking back on this MK Ultra thing. And I think it must have been about 94, 95, when Bill Clinton came out and he apologized to America, because I think just before that, there was a whole wad of declassified CIA documents, of the proof of, for many decades before then, of the MK Ultra that the CIA was performing on not only children, but adults as well. And I guess animals too, I would imagine, right? And he apologized and said that would never, ever happen again. And I find that interesting because everyone who's been watching this channel knows Billy, and I say that purely because I don't want to trigger the algorithms. Billy has definitely been part of that system in such a massive way, and probably was controlled to say what he was saying, right? And it has definitely not stopped. In fact, if anything, it's gotten worse. So I would love to know from your side and your experiences in the system, if you can unpack for us, almost like give us a 101 on MK Ultra. I know it's a word that's thrown out a lot, and I think more often than what it should be. And it's like the word narcissist as well. I mean, hell, there are real narcissists in the world, okay? But there are also just people, if I'm having a shitty day and I tell you to go kick a rock, now I'm not a narcissist because I told you to kick a rock, okay? And people are kind of like saying, well, she's a narcissist now. You know, people are being accused of these strong labels, right? But I don't think many of them are real. I think we just, now that we're hearing new lingo, new vocabulary a lot of the time, we're just throwing out this language. So I would love to hear from you, the true MK Ultra. What is it? And how does it, in which areas in your understanding has it gone into, the types of programming they've used? How are they still using it today? Because, and not just in a heavy MK Ultra way, but also just like, I think we call it mind construct, right? It's not mind control, it's mind construct. So like with the vaccine, for example, at that time, they were talking about, okay, well, if you want to save your gran and if you want to like be a, you know, wonderful, open-hearted citizen, then you must go and have yourself jabbed, that sort of thing. So they've literally twisted energy and information and human beings to the point that I don't think many people even know who the heck they are anymore, let alone which direction to walk in.
I totally agree. It's because MK Ultra is so pervasive and it has so many different faces and so many different names, you know, and the illusion that it was stopped, you know, has been a lie several times. It'll come around again and say it's been stopped when it's only expanded or changed names or whatever. Bill Clinton was very much a deliberate part of pretending that it was being stopped because there were so many survivors coming forward then that there was no way to suppress the information anymore. So it's like, okay, it's stopped, but it's important to note that my 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America, which was validated by clean law enforcement and intelligence, every word of it is already proven true. It was buried under national security by Bill Clinton because it had details in there on both him and Hillary, their relationship with George Bush, and their purpose in bringing MK Ultra mind control of the masses into being through several ways, including pedophilia, will understand the pedophile agenda is a mind control agenda. And that is definitely where my story begins. So
Right.
it went, yeah. I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family. My mother was sexually abused and being trafficked to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. My father was sexually abused and ritually abused, and he was sexually abusing me from infancy. That sexual abuse was something I didn't know was wrong. I mean, I was brand new to this world, but my brain knew it was wrong. And that's the important information that we need to understand again is our birthright information on our own mind brain function. What happens when trauma occurs? Well, the neuron pathways in the brain physically shut down around the trauma, repress it into the subconscious, so the rest of the mind can develop and function normally. That's the purpose of what is defined as the mind's sane defense to trauma too horrible to comprehend. Well, as more trauma occurs, more neuron pathways are shut down, more memory is repressed, and as more and more neuron pathways shut down, suggestibility heightens, where the subconscious mind will take in any program, it will take in anything it's told without a conscious mind filter. We don't critically analyze anything. It's just information going into our subconscious, especially with a repetitive media narrative. A repetitive media narrative like mask up, get the injection, social distance. How many times did we hear that? That affects the subconscious. Our subconscious drives our conscious thoughts, and our conscious thoughts drive our actions. So we understand how we're being controlled by this mind control agenda that has been going on my whole life, has been sneaking in on society, and it has been imposed on a global scale through Mind Control Masters of Virus 2020. It's all part of a globalist slave society agenda. And all we need to do is follow the money to see who's at the top pulling the strings, and we'll understand those ones at the top meet in secret. And they have their secret societies, like that Blue Masonic Lodge my grandfather ran. Is all this secrecy? It is information on mind control, how to manipulate a population. That information on mind control is what we have a right to know and a need to know so that we have our birthright defense back. But it's been buried under national security because, again, knowledge is our defense against mind control. That information is not supposed to get out there. It's why Bill Clinton invoked the national security on my 1995 testimony. They didn't want the information out there because then people would remember that we have all the power, and these puppet masters only have as much power as we give them or let them steal.
Exactly. It was interesting when you were talking about the neuro pathways and everything being shut down. And I was watching a podcast not too long ago, or reading something I don't remember, but they were talking about exactly the same thing in terms of empathy. Because of course, with so much blood and torture and suffering, and of course the children are forced to do horrific things at a very young age to either animals or other kids or what have you. So the empathy as well, those empathetic pathways are shut down too. And obviously with more generations with lack of empathy, that then becomes ingrained into the DNA. So that was actually very interesting. Yeah. So it's not
exactly
even eventually.
That formula for mind control is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, a classroom, a military, or the world. Trauma is the basis of it. And it had been found through the Hitler-Himmler research, there's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while the brain is still forming. That shuts those neuron pathways down and keeps them shut down. Like I said, they want those neuron pathways shut down. They don't want our brain firing properly. So other components of MK Ultra Mind Control are sleep, food, and water deprivation. If we don't get enough sleep, we're not thinking very clear. If we're eating food that has no nutrition, our brains aren't firing the way that they need to. If we're not getting sufficient water, our brains are mostly water. Or if our water is tainted with fluoride or chemicals or anything else that shuts down more neuron pathways in our brain. When we understand the formula for mind control is trauma, sleep, food, and water deprivation, we start to see how we've been conditioned to work 9 to 5, 5 to 9, to put food on the table that has no nutritional value because it's been bioengineered and genetically altered now. That is by deliberate design to dumb us down and make us compliant. We need to get nutrition back in our food. We need to clean up our water supplies so that we have fresh water the way nature intended. We need to be able to get enough rest and take good care of ourselves again to keep a balance against the stress that's being imposed, because this constant barrage of trauma and fear is very deliberate to keep us dumbed down and numbed down. Because even if someone hasn't been conditioned from childhood with sexual abuse like I was, the brain still responds to trauma by freezing in fright. And in that moment, well, it's frozen in fright, a repetitive media narrative programs the subconscious mind. So, going back to mind control masked as a virus, everyone was so scared that the whole world was going to die, and that fear was a constant ticker tape being generated. It was a constant repetitive narrative, while at the same time telling us to mask up, get the injection, and social distance. Well, we can't talk to each other if our voices are muffled with a mask, especially from a distance. That those masks also depersonalize and inhibit oxygen to the brain necessary for critical analysis-free thought. So all these are classic MK Ultra mind control components that if people understood that masks are used in MK Ultra mind control to depersonalize and inhibit oxygen to the brain, then they would understand why that was enforced on the global population, and they wouldn't have cooperated with it any more than I did. Because again, knowledge is our defense against it. When we understand that and start seeing what's going on, we don't cooperate anymore. Again, these perpetrators, these puppet masters, these self-appointed, self-anointed global leaders only have as much power as we give them or let them steal. It's up to each and every one of us to remember who we are and why we're here and reclaim our own power.
So true.
And stop cooperating.
It's so true. Firstly, I want to just say thank you to beautiful Joanne for your sticker, and Yelena. So appreciate you from Australia and Bosnia. Thank you so much for the gifts. Really, really appreciate you guys. You said 3-4 things, which absolutely went boom, 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 boom for me. You spoke about trauma, sleep deprivation, water and food deprivation being the 4 main keys or doorways, if you will, want to look at it like that, for mind control. But Cathy, isn't it interesting how when we look at this, how we just in our daily lives are depriving ourselves of that? Look at it. How many of us don't sleep because we've got internet, Wi-Fi, a million, all sorts of technologies, and having sleepless night, watching Netflix or whatever it is. We deprive ourselves of sleep because of stress in our environment. Okay. Our food, we know, and I know, and especially in America, there has been a war declared on your food for years now. I'm not going to say the same is not happening here, but I can definitely say 1,000,000 times less. Is it happening here? But for sure, the food, the contamination, okay, the water. I mean, if we just look at how many of us don't drink enough water every day, just think about that. Whether we have access to it or not, how many of us complain that we need to drink 2 liters of water a day? Well, I don't know what you guys call it there. For us, it's 2 liters. I think it's like 4 pints or whatever it is for you guys. But that's what I'm saying. Think about that. If we just plugged in right there, started drinking water, enough water every day to hydrate our body, because energy moves 4 times faster through water than what it does through air. So immediately you start clearing, and water cleanses and purifies the energy pathways in your body so that you aren't as clogged up anymore. Think about blowing your nose when you've got a cold. It's like that almost, right? So now the energy pathways are clearer. How many people live at McDonald's, fast foods, all of these disgusting foods, instead of growing them, planting it, cooking with love? And because love is such an important ingredient in food, right? In anything that you consume. So, and then of course, give ourselves 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night, where even if you can't sleep per se, you lay down, you relax, you maybe listen to some sounds or some music or something, you practice some breathing, whatever. You actually learn to overcome the fear and the stress. And of course, just by the movies we watch, the television we watch, the social media, we're opening ourselves up to trauma all day, every day, right? And of course, hearing stuff like this is traumatic, but that's why we have to go back and learn, as exactly what you're saying, the healing, the balance, all of that. I don't know, what's your take on that? Am I like flying off the handle unnecessarily? But I just see that.
Oh, it's straight on truth right there. And it's up to us to take responsibility for our nutrition again, and to realize too that the generational aspect of mind control is the reason I was targeted for it. So there's various projects in MK Ultra that were brought over through Project Paperclip into the US when we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists. With them came this formula for mind control,
right?
And that formula showed that not only is there's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child, but that occult ritual abuse was also extremely traumatic, and that there is a multi-generational effect. That's why I was thrust into the multi-generational aspect of Project of MK Ultra, Project Monarch. That is the multi-generational aspect. When my father was caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails, a local politician I'd been trafficked to since a little itty bitty toddler approached him and told him he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would sell me into the CIA's MK Ultra Project Monarch, because of that whole multi-generational aspect. My father thought it was great, and sold me into it. And this local politician was Gerald Ford, who went on to become the unelected president of the United States. This is how my victimization rose to a White House, Pentagon level, how I was deep in the Washington, D.C. swamp among the perpetrators who were deciding how they could impose the fate of their efforts on the population, and they needed to do it multi-generationally. So this has been creeping in now for many generations. It's been happening where people haven't paid any attention to what was going on. Subliminals were being blasted into their brains to allow for pedophilia. Now we're at a point where sexualization of children is being ignored when it is threatening the whole sanctity of our humanity. Our whole humanity is under attack. but yet we've been conditioned and lulled to sleep for so many generations. We've allowed for artificial sweetener. Aspartame came in. That was one of the very first 3-4 generations ago that started eroding critical analysis free thought in the brain. The fluoride went in the water right away. You know, that's, we all have heard about that one. It's been going on forever. And that too dumbs us down where we lose our critical analysis. So we've got multi-generational effects that have us more compliant already. But the Great Awakening is happening because soul is stronger than genetics. It doesn't matter that we've got so many generations that are affected. We can still break that chain. I'm living proof of that. And so are many others who are waking up. This Great Awakening that's sweeping the world is real. It's massive. We've passed critical mass in humanity. It's just not going to take it anymore because they're starting to realize that mind control has been imposed on us for so long. It's kept us looking outside ourselves to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult religion to tell us how to live our lives. When we've got all that inside, we've been blessed with that all along. It's all within us, you know, and people are starting to go within and like, wow, yeah, I've got all the power. I'm not going to, you know, comply anymore. And they're breaking that generational chain and then getting out to grow their own food, re-nourish the soil. You know, we've got this huge evolution going on, but it's going to take full understanding of our own birthright information on mind-brain function to stop the grip that these perpetrators have had over humanity for so long that we've got a ways to go to unravel what has been done and to stop the trauma. I mean, that war is traumatic. We are not, that's not who we all are inside. We're all about peace. We're all about love. That's our humanity. We need to reclaim that back and stop caving into the manipulations outside ourselves that have extended now into exactly what you said, Chantelle, about the devices, the cell phones and the computers and the controlled media. That's their voice. That's their manipulation tactic. We need to get back to some basics and get our feet in the ground again. Feel the earth.
I would definitely agree with that. I would like to know your opinion on religion in terms of mind control, or religion and mind control, because from what I can see, they have used religion, and I'm not just talking fundamentalist Christianity, and I say fundamentalist because I think a lot of it is extreme, right? But lots of other religions as well to instill fear. What has been your experience of that? Were you also religiously abused, if you will? Was that also part of your abuse?
Yes, I was horrifically religiously abused within our local Catholic church, with where they blur the line on the occult ritual, the satanic abuse. Any fear of death is it can be used. And when we consider any religion that leads us outside ourselves and leads us around by fear, we need to reconsider and go within and recenter, align with the divine within, and see, is that really where we need to be, or are we being manipulated? Because our religion has been infiltrated so horrifically for mind control purposes. And when any level of mind control, any level of indoctrination, manipulation, repetitive narrative, whatever, just the most mild level, any level of mind control inhibits our free will. It stops our ability for having soul expression. And without soul expression, We have no compassion for each other. We lose our compassion. We lose our
Exactly.
discernment of truth. We lose our ability to stand for anything that we believe in. We lose our ability to even think, to choose, to research something. Above all, we lose our ability to align with the divine within, to access that strength of the
Exactly.
human spirit and the infinite power of love. You know, that is our saving grace. And when we realize that, we start to understand that this whole mind control agenda is a spiritual warfare. If we can't think to access our strength of spirit, then our vibration stays low. It stays in fear mode. It stays in the trauma level. And that's what they want. These perpetrators aren't like us. They do not like us. And they feed off of dark, negative, low vibration energy. So they use trauma and
Exactly.
fear. They and keep us our vibration lower, because that's their vibration. Haven't been around them. I can tell you their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit and the power of love, because that is the highest vibration there is. They can't touch it. They can't reach it. They can't control. The only thing they can do is manipulate our minds so that we forget to access it.
Right. And then we
And
sink.
that's their ultimate goal. Yeah.
And that brings us down, because when we forget our true nature and our true spirit, we then get lost, right? It's like we're fumbling around in the dark. And then
Yes.
we do all sorts of, and get involved and open ourselves up to all sorts of things that then draw us into that negative vibration that literally holds us back. I just love the way you speak. Every time you talk about love and the vibration of love, your whole face just lights up. I just love. I have to every time. It's lovely, and I'm sure the viewers are aware of it as well. Oh
Well,
wow,
you know,
Yelena, thank you,
when we
so
don't
generous,
have
thank you.
that 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 vibration, when we don't have that, and we want to go find it again, and look outside ourselves for it, and go to a church. There's many churches that are right there ready to take control, because once they have any level of control, they are financially, they
Exactly,
financially benefit. So, we need to start looking at any time we're let outside ourselves, whether it's indoctrination in a school system, whether it's indoctrination in a occult religion, whether it's through politicians skilled in the language of the subconscious, where they can manipulate our subconscious mind to drive our thoughts. We've got many aspects of society that have been infiltrated, and it's such an important um, realization that we all need to have, so that we can start critically analyzing that and realize that we have all the power. We have had
exactly,
it all along. We just forgot.
exactly. I'd be interested to know, because religion is such a strong tool they use in MK Ultra. And I know you have a beautiful story, which maybe you wouldn't mind just sharing again, in case some of our viewers haven't heard that yet, of how you got out. But what I'd also like to know, with Mark, of course, and what I'd also like to know is, what were the spiritual tools you used to get out? Was it religion per se, or was it really the power of love?
Oh, absolutely, love. I think it will be important to note that as the neuron pathways in the brain shut down, the lack of any free thought occurred. I went over 30 years without my free thought, free will. I didn't have that capacity. So it's like the brain tries to compensate for the lack of thought, the lack of conscious awareness, the lack of critical thinking, by it's like I was blasted into the primitive parts of my brain. And this happens with MK Ultra survivors all the time. We get blasted into that part where we have heightened intuition, we have telepathic capacity, we have the ability to attune to vibration. We can sense evil, we can sense good, we have these abilities kind of like animals have. You know, you look at dogs and they know who's good, they know who's bad. So do we. We just forgot to tap into that, you know, and pets can remind us to tap into that. Because just because trauma is what blasted me into those parts of my brain, every one of us has that in our brain. It's the way we're made and we can access it. We just need to start recognizing it again, utilizing it, trusting in ourselves, and relying on it. So by the time Mark lifted me out of my daughter and me out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp, I didn't know good people existed in the world. My whole world had been saturated with torture, abuse, horrific people who were torturing and abusing little children. You know, the blood traumas, the occult, the satanic aspects. It was also extremely traumatic. I really had lost any ability to know that goodness existed. I do remember my last free thought was, I wish there was some place in the world where people didn't hurt each other. You know, so obviously that's against my innate being, but nevertheless, by the time Mark came along when I was 30, I didn't know good people existed. So I learned to trust Mark because just like my brain shut down the neuron pathways with my father's sexual abuse in infancy, our brains also know when we're safe. And my brain knew I was safe, and those neuron pathways started opening, memory started leaking out. And that was a major part of the healing process. But I wouldn't have been able to trust Mark to apply the healing methods he was reminding me of that we've all been blessed, or we all have within us, had it not been for the animals. Because when he rescued my daughter and me, he also rescued all our pets, our cows and horses and guineas and chickens and dogs and cats, because he knew people who abuse children abuse animals and vice versa. And he knew that the abuse of those animals was used as a trauma base for us. So he took them all to safety too. That had a profound impact on my senses and my being. It also, the fact that his pets loved him and were always so happy when he came home. He had raccoons and fox and dogs, and everybody loved on him and patted on him and couldn't wait to see him. And it was like, wow, if they can trust him, I can too. So since I had senses like an animal, I learned from the animals that I could trust Mark. And that was my first step towards being able to accept that it was within me to heal. And then from there, it was love for my daughter and her dire situation that compelled me to heal faster, you know, move forward, and love for Mark too. Love is the most powerful healing force in the universe, and is another reason why we're being kept from our ability to access that love, because then we have not only the compassion, but the love and the ability to help others. And when we heal from within, when we heal ourselves, we can help others heal. And that's the most exciting news, that as people are waking up to see the extent of satanic ritual abuse, the horrific MK Ultra mind control tortures that people endure, the human hunting games that have gone on for so long, the horrific traumas and tortures, no matter what it is that anyone experienced, their spirit was in a safe, loving space too. The spirit takes flight, it's in that safe, loving space, and they're able to heal, because these negative, dark, low vibration forces can't touch it. It's be like darkness penetrating light. That can't happen. You know, light exposes what's going on in the dark. And right now, so many people are shining that love light that we're seeing the horrors that have gone on. We're seeing the secrets that have gone on in the dark. And that's sometimes hard for people to see. But when they realize that we have the victory, that the children can heal, and when they do, they're going to have a testimony of the strength of the human spirit, far, far more profound than any religion words could give us. We have an evolutionary spiritual opportunity happening right here. And that's an important part to remember.
The greatest alchemical process is occurring on this planet right now. And people like you are making it happen. I would just like to, I'd just like to hear your response to rights are not tradition. MK Ultra destroyed my life. What do you say to someone who feels that way, Cathy?
That healing is a process. It's not an event, and it takes time. And that that saving grace that we have within us is something that we attach to. It's like, well, when Mark lifted my daughter and me out, I thought, well, my life is destroyed. It's over. There's nothing I can do with what I experienced. How am I ever going to live with myself? How am I going to love myself? And I found that daily affirmations and listening to other people say, well, you got to forgive your abusers, you know, and that kind of stuff was not being helpful to me whatsoever. So to someone like that, they're probably listening to the wrong people. I would recommend PTSD Time to Heal, the healing methods Mark taught me, because it's not about me. It's about every one of us. It's a reminder of our birthright information. And I would encourage the simple application of those easy to apply methods to start reclaiming that, and to realize, like I did, that when we go to the base core energy of our being, when we go so deep inside ourselves and find that little spark inside, the essence of our being, we find that it's love. Our humanity inside is love. And when we realign with that and have that realization, then it's easier to live the love we are than to, you know, love ourselves from outside input. And when we live the love we are, that takes us back to the innocence and the purity of childhood. It's not that childhood can be stolen from any of us, because childhood is the purest spiritual energy. They're born with birthright information, and we all still have all that within. So everyone everywhere needs to overcome what life has put in front of us. What happens to us in life is not who we are. Who we are is still within, and it's within the energy of our humanity, the essence of who we are. And from there, we're able to not only heal, but to reclaim the beauty that life was intended to be. We reclaim our innocence, we reclaim our purity, we reclaim our ability to live that love. And yeah, it's a heck of a process to go through, but when it's understood that it can be overcome, we realize, oh, we didn't have our childhood stolen. That was what they wanted us to believe. We all have that innocence within.
It's so true. You know what people talk about the inner child and the inner healing and the inner child healing. And yes, that is true. We do. Most of us, I think every one of us actually has that part of us that has been wounded as a child, right? And it stunts our emotional growth. So we will therefore react to situations as a 9-year-old would, or a 12-year-old would, or whatever.
Yes.
And yes, exactly. So it's up to us to go back to those parts of ourselves and heal that by reminding the immature parts or the wounded parts, this is who we become. That as an adult, it is safe for you to be an adult. And
Yes.
that's a process of teaching the child how to love again and how to trust again. That's the process of you. And it's so beautiful when people get that, Cathy, as I can see you certainly have, because for me, it's that being able to move into that innocence at any point in time, right? Rolling on the floor with your dog or your cat or your grandchild or whatever it might be, right? Riding your bicycle, but in the next minute being able to take on the business role in your business or whatever it might be. So it's that ability to be able to be these things without pain and without glitches, that you've really understood that the child and the pureness within you, the innocence never, ever, ever dies. It's always there, always there.
It is. And that what happens to us in life, those lessons, what we have to deal with, the realities, the harsh realities of all that, is an evolutionary process of its own, because it will give us defense against mind control going forward. We'll recognize when someone's manipulating us. We'll recognize all that. So we learn to trust ourselves above all else, because we can protect ourselves better than anybody. And it's like in my healing process, when I opened the neuron pathways in my brain, when I was able to go through that innate healing process and reclaim my free thought, free will, and all that aspect, I didn't have to give up what I had learned through my experience of the heightened senses, the intuitions, the telepathy, the intuitive capabilities that are just so profound. We don't have to let go of any of that. So not only do we have our innocence and a fierce knowledge with which to protect that innocence going forward, but we also have the heightened senses to use and be able to sense when there's a problem and sense when there's a danger, and to be able to use those intuitions and that understand the telepathy that's coming at us. And so we have got a defense mechanism that is so hyper protective that we can maintain our innocence all the time. And that is such a celebration of healing. It's such a celebration of love. It's such a celebration of our humanity, that we have that capacity to come back stronger than ever, instead of damaged, like the way bad therapy and mental health, wants to tell us, well, you're damaged forever. And no, you don't have to. You can be stronger than ever because
than ever. Isn't it interesting? You go to like a place like NA, and I know my nephew at one point got himself into a spot of trouble there. So I was hanging out with him and went with him to one or two of these meetings. Well, actually one. And the first thing you say, hello, my name is John and I'm a drug addict. Or hello, my name is so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. Or, wow. And I'm like, no, that's not how you heal. I mean, it's different. You have to acknowledge, right, where your issue lies. You've got to actually acknowledge and come clean with yourself about that. But to stay stuck in that Groundhog Day of I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. And the interesting part, Cathy, that I've seen with a lot of addicts as well, is that even though you're coming off like heavy meds or heavy drugs, rather, the meds they put you on, the pharmaceutical meds they put you on, is 10 times worse. It's 10 times worse. And people will stop that meeting every 15 minutes for a smoke break. It's like everyone is smoking and everyone's on heavy meds. And No judgment, guys. Honestly, there's no judgment. I'm just observing. And I think it's good to get yourself out of that. If you're like taking drugs, just that whole uncontrolled addiction. And that is definitely part of the steps of healing, but that is not where it ends. You've got to get out of that thing. I am Chantelle and I'm an alcoholic. I mean, I can't even imagine saying that. I mean, I just did, but it was foreign to my tongue, for sure. But imagine saying that 5 times a week and telling everybody that who you meet, right?
It's so wrong. It's reinforcing a negative instead of getting to the root cause of what we're running from, because if there's an addiction or drugs are being used in that way, then there's a root cause that's not being addressed.
Exactly.
We've got a long way to go to realize that we have so much healing capacity without having to rely on big pharma, because big pharma is just coming along with people who are remembering their trauma and doping them up with their pharmaceuticals to keep them from remembering who they are and why they're here. They're keeping us away from our strength of the human spirit and infinite power of love very deliberately with the pharmaceuticals. Big pharma is, follow the money. They're right at the top of this puppet master manipulation of all of us. And we don't need their drugs. We don't need their dumbing down. We need to realize our own strength, and we have to have a clear mind in order to be able to do that. So if any drug is needed, if anything is needed, then the causation hasn't been addressed. And when survivors start to heal, they have adrenal systems that are completely out of whack from the tortures that they went through. And those adrenal systems take a gentle nurturing back into health, and safety, again, is key. So we don't need antidepressants. We don't need anti-anxiety. We don't need anything to manipulate that other than to remember who we are and why we're here.
Right. Exactly. And of all of that, I mean, we speak, I often speak to Jerry Marzinski, who's, I don't know if you've heard any of his stuff, but he's understood that schizophrenia is not hallucinations. It's really entities, and that start from exactly the type of trauma that we've been speaking about earlier on, right? And it's kind of like the last outpost for narcissism, but it's entities that have literally taken over the body, and big pharma literally uses that their stuff to suppress that. And it's incredible when we see how this whole mafia, this medical mafia, amongst all the other mafias operating, actually how destructive they are. That's for sure.
Yeah, and even the term entities gives the power outside self to something etherical, when in fact it's the way our brain is misfiring from the abuse. It's the way the neuron pathways were shut down and compartmentalized. So all that can be healed, but the schizophrenia is horrifically misdiagnosed, along with the targeted individual voice to skull programming is very often misdiagnosed. Yes, there's the technologies. Yes, there's legitimate psychiatric issues, but usually it is a matter of semantics, because like when I started my healing process, I heard the voices of my abusers in my head telling me what to do. If I had just announced that to a misinformed psychiatrist or psychologist, they would have said I was schizophrenic. They would have said I was bipolar. If I had gone online and looked it up like people do today to wonder what in the world is that going on in my head, then they say, oh, it's voice to skull. I see. That's what it is. So, their suggestibility is so high that they're ready to gravitate to whatever they're told is the issue. When
Exactly.
in fact, if they pick up
Mm.
that pen and paper and start writing it out, they're going to open the neuron pathways in their brain and get to the truth and the reality of what has happened.
I so look forward to having future conversations with you about that, because I'm so with you on that. It's exactly, the trauma has absolutely created that. And it's not even, they talk about they've stolen your soul or whatever it might be, or fragmented. They can't actually do that in reality, but they can make you believe
Right.
that they've done that. And the problem is, when you believe that they've done that, that's when they are open to manipulating you to the nth degree. And that's why when you realize they can actually never take from you, which never was theirs to begin with.
Right.
Right? So all you have to do is just know that that thought in itself is what reclaims your energy or reclaims your power. It's that thought or that understanding is what switches that light on again. Yeah? What's your take on that?
Absolutely. Truth makes us free, and that's the reality of how we're made. We've been blessed with a resiliency of body, mind, and spirit. We have a capacity for healing, and anybody who tells us otherwise, anything outside ourselves that suggests otherwise, is leading, and very often has been, like the multi-generational aspect, has been conditioned and indoctrinated in their education to perpetuate the repression of our amazing capacities. So there's so many aspects of society that need to heal and start facing truth and expand their thinking beyond what they think they know, because there's a lot more to learn.
So much more. So much more. I mean, just so much more. I think we have, and as you were saying earlier on, these are such amazing times to be alive. For us to be witnessing this awakening and being part of it is such a privilege, when actually so many people are unfortunately still asleep. But the awakening in the last 5 years, I mean, you've been doing this for 35 years, Cathy.
Yeah.
How was it in the beginning for you? Who was the first person you tried to tell or told? And that'd be interesting. How were you received? How was your testimony initially received when you first started talking about this?
Well, I had healed from within myself and already knew my own truth. I had written out my memory, which we'll get into in our next conversation. But the the fact that I had healed made it where I couldn't be triggered. And I also didn't need validation outside myself as to what my truth is and was. So there's still a lot of healing process going on. But my daughter's situation was extreme. She had been thrust into the corrupted Child Protective Services, and that's just another way of trafficking children here. And it was absolutely horrific. So I was trying to raise awareness for her and her need, and telling them they had no right to take custody of her. It was a medical kidnapping. They had no right to that. And I began speaking out and explaining what was really going on. So it was love for Kelly that compelled me to start speaking out so early. And when people didn't want to believe what I was saying, I was touched that people were so innocent that they couldn't wrap their brain around the reality. And I realized that people were ignorant. I realized they had been deliberately left in the dark. I realized that, I was coming out of a hell screaming that in a hell nobody knew existed, because society had suppressed the information for so long. So it gave me a deep
Right.
understanding into the magnitude of social engineering and the goodness, the innate goodness of people. If I had needed them to validate it, I guess I would have been mad, but I didn't. I needed them to hear what I was saying, because truth is seeds planted. It never goes away. Truth is its own energy force. It's an absolute. So I knew that eventually they would see what was happening and be able to join me in helping my daughter. And that's exactly what happened.
And here you are 35 years later. How is your daughter? I mean, how's she now after? Is she good?
Well, she had that double whammy, the compound felony of MK Ultra mind control. And then when Mark lifted her and I out of the swamp, she had time to be safe. She had time to know that safety existed. She had time to critically analyze. She was able to learn from Mark in that short year before she was taken into custody to re-traumatize her further. So then she was thrust into that. And so that's like a major compound felony that she experienced, to be safe and then not, and be taken away from those who loved her. You know, it was really harsh. But as she clearly states, that 1 year, that little bit of time she had when she learned to think, gave her the capacity to think through her circumstances, so that when she was told her past wasn't real, she just retorted, your beliefs don't change reality. When she was being indoctrinated in the school system, she said programmed information is not applicable knowledge. And so she was always a constant source of strength, just from having had that, and the realization that I was fighting with everything I had for her. And she told me, she said, how many other mothers would take on a whole government for their children? You know, she never felt abandoned at all. She only felt love. So through it all, that made the big difference to where she is today. She is the most amazing resiliency, the most profound example of the resiliency, the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love that I have ever seen. She's extremely intelligent, very brilliant, and uses the reality of her past as a filter to understand what's happening today. The conversations that she and I have are so profound. They're so divine. They're so five-dimensional. I mean, they're so amazing because of what we know and what we're seeing as we watch people wake up to embrace that same truth. So yeah, she's just my closest friend, and an amazing example of there's no excuse not to heal, people. It's within us all. If she can do it, we all can do it.
I mean, really, there's just, I take my hat off to you survivors and thrivers. Really, I do. Because, and I say that to a lot of the other people I work with as well who are survivors. I mean, to come through what you people have come through, and even be sane, let alone loving and radiant after that. I mean, that to me, and I think that for humanity is a miracle of love. You know, you guys are walking, talking examples of miracles of love. That's really, it's the first time I've actually put it in those words. It's just dawned on me now.